Jacob. So family is a big deal for us and our grandchildren. And, that's probably the most important thing in my life. But, and being with you guys and doing this has just added a brand new dimension and something I'm really excited about.
Stan, I've known
you. Are you still there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I've known you since you came into Cafe 22 Tango to do a retirement party from somebody from Disney that was retiring, and I think they were going into the CIA or the FBI, and it was such an odd thing. But that's how I met you, and the first party you booked me for, which I didn't know how extraordinary it was a party held at Quincy Jones' home with his daughters being the hostesses. And that was the first party you brought me into. And I'm trying to think if that was like 2003 or 2004. 2004.
Probably 3 or 4. Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Good times. Great start.
Really? Yeah, really was. It was very impressive. And it was such a detailed project. I mean, one person did the tablecloth, somebody else did the cupcakes, somebody else did the cups, and it was this beautiful Alice in Wonderland tea party held in this Bel Air mansion, and it was incredible. So, and working for Disney has been really kind of an interesting. It's so many creative people to create. The most creative people in the world desire an opportunity just to serve at Disneyland. So tell us, like, I mean, gosh, I love your stories. The one story I really want to hear about that I thought was great was that you wanted to be a tuba player when you were a kid, and your dad instructed you as if you were a trumpet player. And I really want to hear that story for a minute.
I took the tuba on a bet, on a dare, when I was in 4th grade. The band director came into the school and school assembly and showed everybody all the different instruments that you could take in the 4th grade back in Edina, Minnesota. And so my friends I was sitting with, Bruce McFadden and Keith Critchlow, they said, we'll give you a quarter. Each of us will give you a quarter if you take the tuba. Well, in 1954, 50 cents was quite a lot. So I said, of course I will. So I went down there and signed up for the tuba and came home and told my folks about it. And they didn't really freak out like I thought they might, because they were both convinced I'd probably only do it for a month or two and then get tired of lugging that big thing around. But my father being a trumpet player, he brought home some trumpet solos and trumpet music, and I started playing the trumpet stuff, transcribing it. My dad would transcribe it, and I would play that, not knowing that you weren't supposed to do that on a tuba. And so I kind of took that the next step and started to do a little bit of some kind of 20s and 30s and 40s jazz. And the next thing you know, I'm on the Lawrence Welk show when I'm in, 13, I guess, back in 1958. Geez, that's a long time ago. Anyhow, so Welk had heard me in Minneapolis at the State Fair and asked if I wanted to come out and be on the show. And I said, of course, So my dad and I flew out, and I was on the show, and he offered me a full-time job because he had a kids band back then. It was Cubby O'Brien on drums and whatever. So they offered me a full-time gig, but my parents were both school teachers back in Minneapolis, and I was there, and it would have been a big hassle moving to Hollywood. And so that was kind of the beginning of my doing what I did, with the tuba. And ever since then, it's just been a really lot of fun, I mean, it's taken me, like you said, it's taken me to Russia, it's taken me to China. I was a soloist in the Soviet Union with the University of Minnesota Wind Ensemble. And, so the tuba's been really good to me. Some other guys, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they haven't had as much fun with it. But, boy, I sure have, And it's mostly just been fun. Totally fun. You got to have fun. Life's too long, for you not having fun. So
I love it.
That's kind of that,
Mm-hmm. So another one of your stories that I really, really love is I love the story where you talk about and you first went to perform on HEE HAW, and I love that. I love that story about your showing up and not knowing what to expect as far as clothes and so forth. And if you're okay sharing that story in public, I would love to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had clothes on the whole time. But anyhow, so here I am, at Disneyland, and I'm going to go down to Nashville to be on HEE HAW. And so I figure, well, that I better dress like a cowboy like those guys do. So I bought brand new cowboy boots, new jeans, a new leather vest, and I got off the plane. And back then, men were carrying man bags,
Wow.
So I had my little man bag, and so I get in the limo. They sent a driver for me. I get in the limo, and the limo driver is a really great guy. He's studio, and he says, Stan, you know what? This is just a suggestion, but maybe you shouldn't carry that purse in down here in Nashville. So I went, okay. So we left that in the car and showed up for the first day of filming, and I've got all my cowboy stuff on, and I look around, and there's Chet Atkins, and he's got golf clothes on, Adidas stuff. Roy Clark, he's got his golfing clothes on, golfing shoes. Everybody in that band, Boots Randolph, Floyd Kramer, they all had golfing clothes. And here I am from L.A. dressed up like a cowboy, and they're looking at me as if, oh, man, here it comes, And so I was totally humiliated, ran into the men's room and yanked my shirt out of my pants and tried to look kind of informal and like I knew what I was doing, even though I didn't. But they got a kick out of it. Everybody laughed at me, and then away we went and had a really good time. And as a result of that, I was on a number of times. My deal with HEE HAW was that I could be on the show as many times as I could write a funny song about the tuba that I could do with Roy, because Roy's a tuba player, or was. And and we would film that show every 6 months. So if in some 6-month segments I didn't have any time because of a busy schedule at Disney, I didn't have time to write any funny tunes, I wouldn't be on. However, maybe there would be another 6-month segment that I wrote 9 or 10 tunes, so I would be on a bunch during that 6-month segment. And so that's kind of how it went, And it all turned out really, really fun for me, definitely. But that was my showing up in the wrong clothes at the wrong time. And I tell you what, it happened again in California when I had my first record date. I was from Minneapolis. I had just moved to Hollywood. I had my first record date at Capitol on the tuba. And I walked in, and I've got a blazer, a blue blazer, gray pants, a white shirt and a tie, because I'm from Minnesota. And I look around, and once again, all the players are in swimming trunks and, golf clothes and whatever. And once again, I had to go out to the car, take off my coat, take off my tie, try and look like I'm, know what I'm doing. So two different times, a boy from the Midwest kind of got a lot of lessons taught to him. But that's what it's all about anyhow. I had a good time.
Okay. So I love it. It just shows a lot of humility on your part to show these stories that you don't look like you're in your best light, but definitely had your best opportunities. So I've never asked you for this story. How did you end up going to work for Disney World? And if I remember right, you were the director of the orchestral program.
Well, no, I was the first full-time leader of the Disney World Band.
Okay.
In 1971, when we opened the park down there, I went down there with a fellow by the name of Sonny Anderson, and he and I and a few other people put together the musicians down there before the park actually opened. And so then I became that first leader of the Disney World Band in September of 71. Stayed down there 2 or 3 years and decided that probably Central Florida wasn't my number one pick. So was ready to move back to California when they said, how would you like to go to Disneyland and be the director of that band? And I said, yes, thank you. So that's how they moved my family and myself and moved out here, and I became the leader of the Disneyland band for a number of years, which was wonderful.
You've had at one point in time when I first met you, you said that you were because you're retired from Disney now, you work in a consultant capacity right now, but right. You said at one point that you were one of the last people working, when you were working at Disneyland, that had actually worked with Walt himself. So
but I had Walt had died in '66. So,
okay.
I had all of those guys in the Disneyland band, the older guys. They had been alive. They had been there when Walt was alive. So I got all of my Walt Disney stories from the older guys in the Disneyland band. And Walt loved the band. He would come down in the morning to listen to the band concert in Town Square, and he'd have a trench coat on. He'd have his hat. He'd pull the hat down and sit there incognito, and always loved that music that was indigenous to Town Square, which is Scott Joplin, John Philip Sousa, Carole King, and that was his favorite. So that's how the band, I think, had the longevity that they had, was that Walt himself liked it. If he hadn't liked it, we'd have been there for, the first 2 weeks and then gone. But he loved the band, so lucky us, lucky Disneyland.
So, there's a real, I'm going to take the conversation on a little divergent point, but live music does something to the human that words can't do. So people can hear music and be receptive to the process of music, especially live music, and it reaches deep inside of them in a way that sometimes words can't access. And in the deepest part of the metaphysical movement, you study the Pythagorean theory, which is each of the instruments works with different chakras. And so I think that what you're telling me is that the spiritual quality of feeling alive through music was there for Walt, and that was his pleasure. But your journey is very spiritual. Talk about the tie between your family and doing seances and your family, the musicians, because it's really an amazing story of contrast. Amazing.
Well, yeah. So this isn't something I tell a lot of people because they'll think I'm nuts. But my mom and dad were both, my mom was the choir director of the Methodist Church, and my dad was the superintendent of Sunday schools. But they also, as kind of a hobby, kind of a parlor hobby, delved into the psychic phenomena and readings and the spiritual aspect of that whole thing, along with, they didn't base their life on all of that, but it was a very interesting part of their life. So I had gone to seances when I was like 15 years old, my first one, and had gone to seances down in Casadega, Florida, which is at least years ago it used to be a hotbed for psychics who lived there. And then Chesterfield, Indiana, right outside of Anderson, Indiana. And that was another place where a lot of psychics back then lived. So they would go there, just kind of a fun deal, and I would go with them. And like I say, it was not the kind of thing you wanted to build your entire life on, everything they said, but it sure was fun. It was interesting. It was just another dimension, not ever taken away from Christianity or Christ, or Ram Dass, but it was just a really interesting journey through all of that. I hate to use the word journey, everybody uses it, but that's kind of what it was through all of that. So I got 1,000 stories about those. So
first of all, I love the fact that you can talk about, a very conventional upbringing with a church and belonging to a church and parents that were active in a church and served in the church. And really, I work as a psychic, and I have never separated myself from my relationship with religion, Christianity, unity, the metaphysical movement, any of those things. So I consider myself a deeply spiritual person. But I have to tell you, my very favorite, and I love that tie that you make between those two worlds, that you can be a good Christian who is an active participant in your religion, and you can still converse with a psychic. And I don't think you actually ever really need a psychic. I think you might want a psychic, but I believe you can live your whole life without ever talking to a psychic. So I don't think it's a need. I think it's a want. But you have one story that I love so much, about the story about when you were at a seance and the American Indians joined into the seance